billionaire's new chef defended his elderly mother, unaware he was watching with a smile. Money can buy this mansion, but it doesn't give you the right to dim the light of the woman who built it. Elena's voice rang through the kitchen as she stepped between the frail elderly woman and the polished executive in designer clothes. Her heart pounded, but her stance was unwavering. She just risked everything. Her job, her financial security, her future, to defend someone who needed protection. Have you ever stood up for someone when it might cost you everything? When your heart knew what was right, even as your mind calculated the risk? That's exactly what Elena Blackwood did when she defended an elderly woman against a wealthy, powerful adversary, not knowing that someone else was watching from the shadows. But how did a renowned chef end up risking her livelihood to protect a billionaire's mother? And what happened when that billionaire stepped out of the shadows with a smile on his face? Hello, my beautiful queens. There comes a moment in every woman's journey when we must decide. Will we stay silent to keep the peace? Or will we speak truth even when our voice shakes? Today's story reminds us that our worth isn't measured by our bank accounts or job titles, but by the courage in our hearts and the integrity in our actions. When Elena defended an elderly woman she barely knew, she wasn't thinking about consequences. She was honoring the wisdom that comes with age, the dignity every person deserves. Sometimes, my sisters, the most powerful thing we can do is simply stand between someone vulnerable and those who would diminish them. Your voice matters. Your courage matters. And sometimes, the very act that seems to risk everything ends up bringing you exactly where you're meant to be. The Sterling estate loomed against the autumn sky, its stone facade more fortress than home. Elena Blackwood stood at the wrought iron gates, her resume clutched in one hand, her cooking tools in the other. The wind whipped her dark curls across her face as she studied the mansion that might be her salvation or just another disappointment. 6 months ago, she'd been executive chef at Lumiere, one of Chicago's most celebrated restaurants. 6 months ago, before the restaurant's owner gambled away their future, before the bankruptcy, before Elena found herself at 43 starting over with nothing but her skills and a mountain of debt that wasn't even hers. "You can do this," she whispered to herself, pressing the intercom button. The voice that answered was clipped, efficient. "Sterling residence. Elena Blackwood. I have an interview for the chef position." The gates swung open with a mechanical groan. Elena squared her shoulders and walked up the curved driveway, autumn leaves crunching beneath her sensible shoes. She traded her designer chef's coat for a simple black blazer, all she could afford now. The woman who opened the door wore a tailored suit that probably cost more than Elena's monthly rent. Her blonde hair was pulled into a severe bun, her smile practiced but cold. "Ms. Blackwood, I'm Catherine Sterling. We spoke on the phone." Elena extended her hand. "Thank you for seeing me, Mrs. Sterling." "It's Ms. Sterling. Kate, please." The correction came with a tight smile. "I manage the household while my brother-in-law is traveling. He's rarely here, but his mother requires specialized care." Elena followed Kate through a foyer that echoed with emptiness despite its opulent furnishings. The house felt unlived in, a museum rather than a home. Paintings hung in perfect alignment, furniture positioned just so, not a cushion out of place. "Your resume is impressive," Kate said as they walked. "Culinary Institute of America, executive positions at several notable establishments. Quite overqualified for a private chef position." "I'm looking for a change of pace," Elena replied, the practiced lie coming easily now. "Less pressure, more creativity." Kate's arched eyebrow suggested she didn't believe this for a second, but she didn't press. "The position includes room and board. You'll have Sundays and Mondays off. Your primary responsibility will be preparing meals for Mrs. Sterling, Evelyn. She's 82 and has specific needs." They arrived at a kitchen that made Elena's heart skip. State-of-the-art appliances gleamed under recessed lighting. Copper pots hung from a ceiling rack. The marble countertops stretched endlessly. It was a chef's dream. "This is where you'll work," Kate said. "Breakfast at 8, lunch at noon, dinner at 6. Evelyn sometimes forgets to eat, so presentation is important. Nothing too rich or spicy. James, Mr. Sterling, Takes his meals separately when he's in residence, which is rare. Elena nodded, already imagining the dishes she could create in this space. And Mrs. Sterling's preferences? Dietary restrictions? Something flickered across Kate's face. Annoyance? She'll eat whatever is put in front of her. She's not particularly aware these days. Early stages of memory loss. The doctor recommends simple, nutritious meals. I understand. My grandmother had similar issues. Food was one of the few pleasures she had toward the end. Kate checked her watch. Let's discuss salary. The figure she named was generous. More than Elena had expected. Enough to start paying down the debts and perhaps eventually rebuild her savings. She tried not to show her relief. When can you start? Kate asked. Immediately. Good. I'll show you to your quarters. The room was on the 3rd floor, spacious, with a private bath and a small sitting area. The window overlooked the extensive gardens, now fading into autumn colors. It was more than adequate, but as Kate left her to settle in, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that something was off about this place. The house was too quiet, too perfect, too cold. But beggars couldn't be choosers. And Elena Blackwood, once the rising star of Chicago's culinary scene, was definitely a beggar now. She unpacked quickly, hanging her few clothes in the closet, placing her cooking tools reverently on the desk. These tools had been with her through culinary school, through her rise through restaurant kitchens, through the creation of dishes that had earned her critical acclaim. They were extensions of her hands, her most valuable possessions. At precisely 5 o'clock, Kate reappeared. Time to meet Evelyn. She should be in the sunroom. Elena followed her down a grand staircase and through a maze of hallways. The sunroom, when they reached it, was anything but sunny. Heavy drapes were drawn across floor-to-ceiling windows, leaving the space in shadow. A small, frail woman sat in a wheelchair, a thin blanket across her lap despite the warmth of the room. Evelyn, Kate said loudly, as if the woman were deaf. This is Elena, your new chef. Evelyn Sterling looked up, and Elena was struck by the clarity in her blue eyes. Eyes that seemed at odds with her fragile appearance. Her silver hair was neatly styled, but her clothes hung loosely on her diminished frame. Hello, Mrs. Sterling, Elena said, stepping forward and offering her hand. I'm looking forward to cooking for you. Evelyn's hand was cool and papery in hers, but her grip was surprisingly firm. You have kind eyes, she said, her voice soft but clear. Are you a good cook? Elena smiled. I like to think so. She was executive chef at Lumiere, Kate interjected. Very prestigious. Lumiere, Evelyn repeated, a spark of recognition lighting her face. James took me there for my birthday 2 years ago. The duck confit was extraordinary. Elena felt a rush of pleasure. That was one of my signature dishes. Was it? Evelyn's eyes crinkled. Then I'm very fortunate to have you here. Kate checked her watch again. Elena, dinner is at 6. I'll leave you to get acquainted with the kitchen. As Kate's footsteps faded, Evelyn's posture seemed to relax slightly. Don't mind Catherine. She runs this house like a military operation. She seems efficient, Elena offered diplomatically. She's a barracuda in Chanel, Evelyn said with unexpected sharpness. But she keeps things running while James is away. A shadow crossed her face. He's always away these days. Elena wasn't sure how to respond to this glimpse of family dynamics. Is there anything special you'd like for dinner tonight, Mrs. Sterling? Evelyn, please. And anything but those dreadful meal replacement shakes. Catherine thinks I don't notice she's been adding to my food. She made a face. I may be old, but my taste buds still work. Elena smiled. No meal replacements. I promise. Back in the kitchen, Elena took inventory of the pantry and refrigerator. Both were well-stocked but oddly impersonal. Basic ingredients, nothing that spoke of preferences or traditions. In the freezer, she found stacks of expensive pre-made meals, the kind that promised nutrition and convenience, but delivered neither flavor nor joy. For her first meal, Elena decided on simplicity. A delicate mushroom soup, roast chicken with herbs, and seasonal vegetables. Comfort food, elevated. As she worked, the kitchen came alive around her. This was her element, where she could forget about debts and failures and focus only on creating something beautiful. At precisely 6, she arranged Evelyn's dinner on a tray and carried it to the sunroom, where the elderly woman still sat in shadow. "Would you mind if I opened the drapes?" Elena asked. "The sunset is beautiful." Without waiting for an answer, she set down the tray and pulled back the heavy fabric. Golden light flooded the room, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air and bringing warmth to the cold space. "Much better," Elena said, turning to find Evelyn watching her with interest. "Dinner is served." She placed the tray on the small table beside Evelyn's chair and removed the covers with a flourish. The aroma of roasted chicken and herbs filled the air. "This looks real," Evelyn said, surprise evident in her voice. "As opposed to whatever those packaged things are that I've been eating. Catherine says they're easier for the staff." Elena frowned. "Well, I prefer to cook from scratch. I hope you enjoy it." She watched as Evelyn took a small bite of chicken, then another larger one. A smile spread across the older woman's face. "It tastes like food. Actual food. That's generally what I aim for," Elena said, smiling back. "You have no idea how long it's been since I've had a proper meal." Evelyn continued eating with increasing enthusiasm. James used to insist on family dinners, but since his father died and he took over the company, he's rarely home. "And Catherine," she trailed off. "Would you like me to stay while you eat?" Elena offered, sensing the woman's loneliness. Evelyn looked surprised, then pleased. "I would like that very much." As Evelyn ate, Elena learned bits and pieces about the Sterling family. How Evelyn and her late husband had built Sterling Technologies from nothing. How their son James had expanded it globally. How Catherine, their daughter-in-law, had stayed on after James's brother Michael died unexpectedly 3 years ago. "She says she's helping, but I think she just likes living in this house," Evelyn confided. "Michael left her well provided for, but not with control of his company shares. Those went to James." By the time Evelyn finished eating, more than Elena had expected given her frail appearance, the sun had set, leaving the room in darkness except for a single lamp. "Thank you," Evelyn said as Elena collected the empty dishes. "Not just for the meal, for the conversation." "My pleasure. What would you like for breakfast tomorrow?" Evelyn considered this as if it were a novel question. "Could you make French toast? With cinnamon?" It was James's favorite as a boy. "French toast it is," Elena promised. Later that night, after cleaning the kitchen to her exacting standards, Elena sat at the small desk in her room and opened her laptop. She typed Sterling Technologies into the search bar, curious about her new employers. James Sterling's face filled the screen, a Forbes profile from last year. He was younger than she'd expected, early 40s perhaps, with his mother's striking blue eyes and a serious expression that the photographer had clearly instructed him to hold. "The Reluctant Titan," the headline called him. The article described a brilliant but private man who had transformed his father's manufacturing company into a tech powerhouse, but who shunned the spotlight that typically came with such success. There was little personal information, no mention of a wife or children, just a brief reference to his philanthropic work. The final paragraph noted that despite his wealth, Sterling was known for his modest lifestyle and hands-on approach to business, often traveling to oversee operations personally. Elena closed the laptop, wondering about the man whose house she now lived in, but who remained a ghost within its walls. More importantly, she wondered about the disconnect between the article's description of a hands-on leader and the reality of an elderly mother left in the care of a seemingly indifferent sister-in-law. "Not your problem," she reminded herself. "You're here to cook, to rebuild your life, not to untangle someone else's family drama." But as she drifted off to sleep, Elena couldn't help thinking about Evelyn's eyes lighting up at the taste of real food, at the simple pleasure of conversation. In her experience, food was more than sustenance. It was connection, memory, care made tangible. And it seemed that care was something in short supply at Sterling Estate. If you've ever had to stand up for someone vulnerable, Hit that like button and share your story in the comments. We rise by lifting others. The next morning, Elena rose early. The kitchen was quiet, the house still sleeping as she prepared Evelyn's breakfast. French toast with cinnamon, just as requested, along with fresh berries and a pot of proper tea. Not the tepid, weak brew she'd noticed on yesterday's dinner tray. At 8 o'clock sharp, she carried the tray not to the sunroom but to Evelyn's suite on the second floor. She knocked gently on the door. "Come in," called a voice that wasn't Evelyn's. Kate stood by the window, already dressed in another immaculate suit, scrolling through her phone. Evelyn sat in an armchair, a robe wrapped around her thin frame. "Good morning," Elena said cheerfully. "French toast with cinnamon, as requested." Kate looked up, frowning. "That's not on Evelyn's approved meal plan. Dr. Winters specifically recommended." "It smells wonderful," Evelyn interrupted, her face brightening. "Just like I used to make for the boys." Elena set the tray on the small table. "I thought we might try eating in the breakfast room tomorrow. It has a lovely view of the gardens." "Evelyn prefers to take her meals in her room," Kate said firmly. "It's easier for her, less confusing." "Actually," Evelyn said with quiet dignity, "I'd like to try the breakfast room, if it's not too much trouble." Kate's lips thinned, but she nodded curtly. "Fine. I'll have Thomas bring you down in the morning." She turned to Elena. "A word outside, please." In the hallway, Kate's professional demeanor slipped. "Ms. Blackwood, I appreciate your enthusiasm, but I need to be clear about something. Evelyn's care is carefully managed according to her doctor's recommendations. Her condition means she needs routine, simplicity, and proper nutrition, not sugary indulgences that might appeal to her diminished palate." Elena met her gaze steadily. "With all due respect, Miss Sterling, I've cooked for people with various health conditions throughout my career. Proper nutrition doesn't have to mean bland or joyless food. And from what I observed yesterday, Mrs. Sterling is quite lucid and capable of making her own food choices." "You've known her for less than 24 hours, Kate said coldly. "I've managed this household for 3 years. Trust me when I say that what you see isn't always the full picture. Evelyn has good days and bad days. On her bad days, she doesn't recognize anyone, becomes agitated, even combative." Elena hesitated, taken aback by this information. "I understand. I'll be mindful of her condition." "See that you are. James trusts me to ensure his mother's comfort and safety while he's away. I take that responsibility very seriously." Kate's phone buzzed. "I have calls to make." Evelyn usually naps after breakfast. Lunch at noon in her room. As Kate walked away, Elena returned to Evelyn's suite. The elderly woman was eating with obvious pleasure. Each bite savored. "This tastes exactly like I remember," she said, looking up as Elena entered. "You have a gift." "Thank you." Elena hesitated, then asked, "Is there anything special you'd like for lunch?" Evelyn considered this. "Surprise me, but nothing from those awful packages in the freezer. Catherine thinks I don't know about those." Elena smiled. "No packages. I promise." Over the next week, a routine developed. Elena would prepare Evelyn's meals with care, focusing on dishes that were nutritious but flavorful. Despite Kate's insistence that Evelyn preferred to eat in her room, Elena gradually coaxed the elderly woman to the breakfast room, then the dining room, and finally the kitchen itself, where Evelyn would sit at the island and watch Elena cook. "I used to love cooking," Evelyn confided one afternoon as Elena prepared a delicate fish stew. "Nothing fancy like what you do, but solid home cooking. Sunday roasts, holiday feasts. Food that brought the family together." "When did you stop?" Elena asked, adding herbs to the broth. "After Harold, my husband, died. James was already running the company by then. The house seemed too big, too empty to bother with proper meals." She sighed. "Then Michael died, and James threw himself even more into work, always traveling, expanding, acquiring. The boy doesn't know how to slow down." And Kate stayed on. She had nowhere else to go, poor thing. Michael left her comfortable, but not wealthy by Sterling standards. James felt responsible for her. Evelyn's eyes clouded. She was different at first, grieving like all of us. But lately, she trailed off. Lately? Elena prompted gently. Evelyn shook her head. Never mind an old woman's ramblings. Tell me about this stew you're making. It smells divine. Elena recognized the deflection but didn't push. Instead, she explained the Provençal influences in the dish, the importance of building layers of flavor. As she talked, she noticed Evelyn sitting straighter, her eyes brighter, her hands gesturing as she asked questions. The transformation was subtle but unmistakable. Good food and genuine conversation were medicine in their own right. That evening, after Evelyn had retired for the night, Elena was cleaning the kitchen when Kate appeared in the doorway. A word, Ms. Blackwood. Elena wiped her hands on a towel. Of course. Kate stepped into the kitchen, her heels clicking sharply against the tile floor. I've noticed you've been taking liberties with Evelyn's care routine. I've been preparing nutritious meals that she enjoys, Elena replied evenly. You've been moving her around the house without supervision. The breakfast room, the dining room, now the kitchen. Kate's voice was tight with controlled anger. Evelyn needs consistency and calm. Her doctor has been very specific about minimizing stimulation and maintaining routine. With respect, Miss Sterling, I've seen remarkable improvement in Mrs. Sterling's appetite and engagement over the past week. She's eating better, conversing more. That's temporary, Kate cut in. You don't understand her condition. These periods of lucidity don't last. When the confusion returns, any disruption to her routine makes it worse. She straightened her already perfect posture. I've scheduled a meeting with Dr. Winters for tomorrow. He'll explain Evelyn's care plan to you directly. Elena hesitated, weighing her words carefully. I'd welcome that conversation. In my experience, good nutrition and social engagement can significantly improve quality of life for people with memory issues. Your experience as a chef hardly qualifies you to make medical assessments, Kate said coldly. Until tomorrow, please return to the original arrangement. Meals in Evelyn's room, simple preparations, no unnecessary conversation that might confuse or agitate her. After Kate left, Elena stood in the silent kitchen, troubled by the conversation. Something didn't add up. The Evelyn she'd come to know over the past week showed occasional forgetfulness. Yes, but nothing like the severe condition Kate described. And the improvement in her demeanor when treated with dignity and served real food was undeniable. The next morning, Elena prepared a simple but elegant breakfast of poached eggs on whole grain toast with avocado and fresh fruit. As instructed, she delivered it to Evelyn's room, where she found the elderly woman alone, gazing out the window. Good morning, Evelyn, Elena said cheerfully. Breakfast is served. Evelyn turned, her face lighting up. Elena, I was hoping it would be you. She glanced at the tray. No French toast today? I thought we'd try something different, but equally delicious, I promise. As Evelyn ate, Elena noticed a leather-bound photo album on the side table. Family photos? She asked. Evelyn nodded. I was feeling nostalgic this morning. Would you like to see? Elena pulled up a chair as Evelyn opened the album. The first pages showed a much younger Evelyn with a tall, distinguished man, Harold, her late husband, standing in front of a modest factory building with Sterling Manufacturing on the sign. That's where it all began, Evelyn said proudly. 1978. Harold had designed a new type of precision component for aircraft engines. Everyone said he was crazy to start his own company, but I believed in him. She turned the pages, showing the business growing, the family expanding. 2 boys, James and Michael, at various ages. Family vacations, Christmases, graduations. James was always the serious one, Evelyn said, pointing to a solemn teenager receiving an academic award. Brilliant like his father, but quieter. Michael was our social butterfly. Her finger moved to a grinning young man with his arm around a pretty blonde woman. That's Catherine when they first started dating. She was different then, warmer. Elena studied the photo with interest. The Kate in the picture looked genuinely happy. her smile reaching her eyes in a way Elena had never witnessed in person. They were so in love, Evelyn continued. Michael's death destroyed something in her. I understand grief. Believe me, I do. But there's been a hardness to her since then. It must be difficult for all of you, Elena said gently. Evelyn closed the album with a sigh. James tries in his way, but he's so much like his father, work is his refuge. The company has tripled in size under his leadership, but at what cost? He's rarely home, rarely calls except to check that I'm taking my medication. She looked directly at Elena. Until you came, meals were the loneliest part of my day. The simple confession tugged at Elena's heart. Well, I'm here now, and I'm not going anywhere. After breakfast, Elena returned to the kitchen to prepare for lunch. She was dicing vegetables when Thomas, the house manager, appeared. Ms. Blackwood, Dr. Winters has arrived. Ms. Sterling asks that you join them in the study. Elena wiped her hands and followed Thomas to a wood-paneled room lined with books. Kate sat in one of the leather armchairs, while a gray-haired man in an expensive suit occupied another. Dr. Winters, this is Elena Blackwood, our new chef, Kate said. Elena, Dr. Winters has been Evelyn's physician for many years. The doctor nodded but didn't stand. Ms. Blackwood, I understand you've been making changes to Evelyn's dietary regimen. I've been preparing fresh, nutritious meals that she enjoys, Elena replied, remaining standing since no one had invited her to sit. Mrs. Sterling has responded very positively. I'm sure your intentions are good, Dr. Winters said with practiced patience, but Evelyn's condition requires careful management. The meal plan I developed with Ms. Sterling provides the optimal balance of nutrition with minimal digestive stress. Those pre-packaged meals in the freezer? Elena couldn't keep the skepticism from her voice. They're loaded with preservatives and sodium. They're specially formulated for seniors with cognitive issues, the doctor countered. Evelyn's apparent enjoyment of your cooking is likely just a response to novelty and attention. It won't last. With respect, Doctor, I've seen significant improvement in her appetite and engagement over the past week. Temporary fluctuations are common with her condition, he said dismissively. The important thing is consistency and routine. Ms. Sterling has managed Evelyn's care admirably in Mr. Sterling's absence. Elena glanced at Kate, who sat with a satisfied expression. I understand the importance of routine, Elena said carefully, but surely quality nutrition and social engagement are equally important components of care? Of course, Dr. Winters agreed smoothly, within appropriate parameters. I'll have my nurse send over updated dietary guidelines. In the meantime, please adhere to the original meal plan. The dismissal was clear. Elena nodded stiffly and left the room, frustration building with each step back to the kitchen. The conversation had felt orchestrated, the doctor deferring to Kate on matters that should have been medical decisions. For lunch, Elena prepared a simple soup and sandwich, technically compliant with the approved meal plan, but made from scratch with fresh ingredients rather than reheated from a package. She brought it to Evelyn's room, where she found the elderly woman dozing in her chair. Evelyn, she said softly, lunch is ready. Evelyn stirred, blinking awake. Elena, I'm sorry, I must have dozed off. No need to apologize. Are you feeling all right? Just tired. Evelyn straightened in her chair, eyeing the tray. That looks lovely. As Evelyn ate, Elena noticed her movements were slower, her conversation less animated than in previous days. The change troubled her, but she kept her concerns to herself, focusing instead on making the meal as enjoyable as possible. Over the next few days, Elena walked a careful line, outwardly complying with Kate's instructions while finding small ways to improve Evelyn's meals and maintain their connection. She served the approved menu items but prepared them from scratch with fresh ingredients. She kept their conversations light but engaging, noting how Evelyn seemed brighter and more alert when they talked about family memories or cooking traditions. On Sunday, her day off, Elena drove into town, exploring the local farmers market and specialty shops. She returned with fresh, seasonal ingredients that would add flavor and nutrition to Evelyn's meals while still conforming to the doctor's guidelines. By the time she returned to Sterling Estate that evening, Elena had resolved to continue doing what she knew was right, providing Evelyn with nourishing food and genuine companionship, regardless of Kate's restrictions. One rainy afternoon, Elena was returning from the herb garden with fresh rosemary for dinner when she heard raised voices from the library. She paused in the hallway, recognizing Kate's sharp tone and Evelyn's softer one. "This is ridiculous, Evelyn. James needs your signature on these documents before the board meeting next week. It's a simple transfer of your remaining shares into the family trust." "I don't understand why it's so urgent," Evelyn replied. "I've always maintained voting rights on my shares." Harold was very specific about that arrangement. "Times have changed. The company is facing new challenges. James needs consolidated control to make necessary decisions quickly." "Then James can call me himself and explain why," Evelyn said with unexpected firmness. "I may be old, Catherine, but I'm not stupid. Harold built that company from nothing. My shares represent his legacy, our legacy. I won't sign them away without understanding exactly what James intends to do. James is busy expanding the Singapore operation. He doesn't have time for lengthy explanations about corporate governance to someone who gets confused about what day it is." Elena winced at the cruelty in Kate's voice. "I'm having a good day today," Evelyn said quietly. "I understand perfectly well what you're asking, and my answer is no. Not until I speak with James directly." "For God's sake, Evelyn, you're being difficult for no reason. These papers just formalize what's already happening. James already makes all the decisions. Then he won't mind waiting until he can explain them to me himself." There was a sound like papers being slammed down. "Fine, have it your way. But don't blame me when James has to fly home from Asia to deal with this nonsense instead of closing the biggest deal in company history." Elena quickly ducked into an alcove as Kate stormed out of the library. Once the sound of her heels had faded, Elena entered the room with her herbs as if she'd just arrived. Evelyn sat in a leather armchair, looking tired but composed. Papers were scattered on the table beside her. "Everything all right?" Elena asked casually. Evelyn looked up, a small smile forming. "Just a disagreement about business matters. Nothing to worry about." Elena nodded, not pushing. "I found some beautiful rosemary in the garden. I thought we might have roast lamb for dinner. It was always my father's favorite." "That sounds lovely." Evelyn's gaze drifted to the papers. "Elena, do you think I'm incompetent?" The question caught Elena off guard. "Absolutely not. Why would you ask that? Catherine seems to think I'm incapable of understanding business decisions anymore. Perhaps she's right. I do get confused sometimes." Elena set down her herbs and took the seat across from Evelyn. "Everyone gets confused sometimes. But in the time I've known you, you've been thoughtful, articulate, and completely capable of making your own decisions." "Thank you for saying that," Evelyn sighed. "I just wish James would call more often. Catherine always seems to be the intermediary now." "Have you tried calling him directly?" "My phone only connects to house extensions. For security, Catherine says." Evelyn shook her head. "And I never was good with computers. The one in James's study is password protected." Elena filed this information away, troubled by the implications. "Well, I should get back to the kitchen if we're having lamb tonight. Would you like to join me? You mentioned you used to enjoy cooking." Evelyn's face brightened. "I'd like that very much." In the kitchen, as they prepared dinner together, Elena watched Evelyn carefully. The elderly woman moved slowly but competently, remembering cooking techniques and family recipes with clarity. There were occasional lapses, a forgotten word, a moment of hesitation, but nothing that suggested the severe impairment Kate had described. "He was always so serious," Evelyn said fondly as they worked. "Even as a child, James had this intensity about him. But he has his father's heart, generous, loyal to a fault." "He sounds like a good man," Elena said, surprised by her own interest. "The best, just too devoted to the company. I keep telling him life is meant to be lived, not just worked through. Evelyn smiled sadly. I worry he'll wake up one day and realize he's missed everything that matters. That night, Elena lay awake, piecing together what she'd learned. Evelyn kept isolated and restricted, her communication controlled, her business decisions intercepted. Kate, pushing for a transfer of Evelyn's remaining shares in the company. James, absent and apparently unaware of his mother's true condition. The picture that emerged was disturbing. But what could Elena, just the chef, a new employee with no authority, do about it? The answer came to her as she drifted off to sleep. She couldn't confront Kate directly or contact James without access to his information. But she could help Evelyn regain her strength and clarity through the one thing Elena knew best: food. The next morning, Elena prepared a special breakfast: omega-3 rich salmon with eggs, antioxidant-packed berries, and green tea instead of the usual heavily sugared coffee Kate provided. When she brought the tray to Evelyn's room, she found Kate already there. "Good morning," Elena said brightly. "Breakfast is served." "You're early," Kate observed, checking her watch. "The salmon is best served right away," Elena explained. Kate frowned at the tray. "This isn't on the approved menu. It complies with all the nutritional guidelines," Elena countered smoothly. "Protein, healthy fats, antioxidants. Exactly what Dr. Winters recommended." Before Kate could object further, Evelyn spoke up. "It looks wonderful, Elena." "Thank you." Kate's lips thinned, but she didn't argue. "I'll be back in an hour to discuss those documents." "Evelyn, try to be more reasonable today." With a final sharp glance at Elena, she left the room. Once Kate was gone, Elena served breakfast. "This looks different," Evelyn observed. "Brain food," Elena said with a wink. "Good for clarity and energy." Over the next several days, Elena continued her quiet revolution. She prepared meals rich in nutrients known to support cognitive function. She encouraged Evelyn to join her in the kitchen, engaging her in conversation and memory-stimulating activities like recalling old recipes. The change was gradual but unmistakable. Evelyn became more alert, her movements more confident, her conversation more focused. She began asking more questions about the household management, about James's travel schedule, about the company's recent activities. Kate noticed the change too. Her visits to Evelyn's room became more frequent, her scrutiny of Elena's activities more intense. She questioned why Evelyn was spending so much time in the kitchen, why she was suddenly asking to review company reports. "My queens, have you ever had to choose between keeping the peace and speaking your truth? Tag a sister who taught you the power of using your voice." The situation came to a head on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. Elena was teaching Evelyn how to make apple strudel, a complex recipe requiring focus and dexterity, when Kate burst into the kitchen, a folder clutched in her hand. "There you are," she said to Evelyn, ignoring Elena completely. "I've been looking everywhere for you. The lawyers have revised the share transfer documents. They need your signature today to make the board meeting deadline." Evelyn looked up from the delicate pastry she was folding. "I told you, Catherine, I won't sign anything until I speak with James directly. James is in transit from Singapore, unreachable for at least 12 hours. Kate set the folder on the counter, narrowly missing the flower. "This can't wait. The board meets tomorrow morning. Then it will have to proceed without my signature," Evelyn said calmly, returning to her pastry work. Kate's face hardened. "You're being unreasonable. James left me in charge for a reason. Your confusion is getting worse, the doctor confirmed it. These decisions are too complex for you now." "I'm not confused about this," Evelyn said firmly. "I know exactly what I'm doing. For God's sake." Kate's voice rose sharply. "Stop being so stubborn. You're just a frail old woman who can't remember what she had for breakfast. The company needs decisive leadership, not sentimental attachment to outdated voting rights." Elena had heard enough. She stepped between Kate and Evelyn, her voice calm but resolute. "That's enough, Ms. Sterling. Mrs. Sterling has made her decision clear." Kate's eyes widened in shock, then narrowed dangerously. "This doesn't concern you. You're just the chef. I'm also someone who respects Mrs. Sterling's dignity and intelligence, Elena replied. And right now you're showing neither. How dare you speak to me that way? I run this household. Money can buy this mansion, Elena interrupted, her voice steady. But it doesn't give you the right to dim the light of the woman who built it. Mrs. Sterling deserves respect, not bullying. You're fired, Kate hissed. Pack your things and be gone by morning. No. The deep male voice came from the doorway, startling all three women. James Sterling stood there, his tall frame filling the entrance, his blue eyes, so like his mother's, fixed on the scene before him. He wore a perfectly tailored suit despite the long flight he must have just endured. His dark hair slightly rumpled in a way that somehow enhanced rather than diminished his commanding presence. James! Evelyn's face lit up. You're home. Hello, Mother. His voice softened as he crossed to kiss her cheek, before turning back to face Kate, his expression hardening. I came back early. I've been standing here for the past 5 minutes, listening to you berate my mother and threaten my chef. Kate paled. James, you don't understand. I was trying to protect the company's interests. By forcing my mother to sign away her shares? By treating her like she's incompetent. His voice was quiet but lethal. I've been receiving very different reports about my mother's condition from you and from Thomas, who's been keeping me informed at my request. He turned to Elena, his gaze softening slightly. And you must be Elena Blackwood. Thomas has told me about the remarkable improvement in my mother's health and spirits since you arrived. Elena felt a flush rise to her cheeks under his intense scrutiny. I've only done my job, Mr. Sterling. From what I just witnessed, you've done far more than that. A hint of a smile touched his lips. You defended my mother when you thought it might cost you your position. That kind of integrity is rare. Kate attempted to regain control. James, we should discuss this privately. There's nothing to discuss. His tone was final. Pack your things, Kate. You're no longer welcome at Sterling Estate. You can't be serious. After everything I've done. After everything you've tried to do, he corrected coldly. The board meeting tomorrow will proceed without the share transfer you were so eager to arrange. And I'll be having a long conversation with Dr. Winters about his questionable medical assessments. Kate looked from James to Evelyn to Elena, realizing she had lost. Without another word, she stormed from the kitchen. In the silence that followed, James turned to his mother. I'm sorry, Mother. I should have been here more. You're here now, Evelyn said simply, patting his hand. And just in time to try Elena's apple strudel. It's your grandmother's recipe. James laughed, the sound transforming his serious face. Is that what smells so amazing? I haven't had that since I was a boy. Then you're in for a treat, Elena said, finding her voice. It'll be ready in about 20 minutes. Perfect. James loosened his tie. That gives me time to change and hear exactly what's been happening in my absence. Later that evening, after Evelyn had retired for the night, Elena found James in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, washing dishes. Mr. Sterling, you don't need to do that. He looked up, those blue eyes catching hers. James, please. And why not? You cooked an incredible meal. It seems only fair. Elena took a dish towel and began drying the plates he'd washed. Your mother told me you rarely eat at home. There never seemed to be a reason to, he admitted. The house hasn't felt like home in a long time. He handed her a wineglass. Until tonight. That was the first real family dinner I've had since my father died. Your mother misses you, Elena said softly. I know. I've been hiding in work, telling myself I was building something important. He shook his head. Meanwhile, Kate was taking advantage of my absence to manipulate my mother and position herself to gain control of significant company shares. I'm sorry I didn't realize sooner what was happening. Don't apologize. You're the one who saw through it and stood up to her. James studied her face. Thomas told me how you've been caring for my mother. Not just cooking for her, but engaging with her, treating her with dignity. He said the transformation has been remarkable. Elena felt herself blush again. Food is more than nutrition. This connection, memory, care made tangible. Your mother needed all of those things. We all do, James said quietly. I'd forgotten that. They worked in companionable silence for a few minutes. The only sound the gentle clink of dishes and the ticking of the kitchen clock. May I ask you something? James said finally. Of course. Why did you risk your job to defend my mother? You've only known her for what, 2 weeks? Elena considered the question. Because it was the right thing to do. And because... She hesitated, then continued. Because I know what it's like to be dismissed, to have your voice taken away. After Lumiere collapsed, no one would listen to me. I was just collateral damage in someone else's financial disaster. James leaned against the counter, giving her his full attention. What happened? Elena told him about the restaurant's owner gambling away investors' money, about the bankruptcy, about taking on debts that weren't hers to protect the staff who had trusted her. You took on others' debts out of a sense of honor, he observed. That's extraordinary. It was foolish, Elena corrected with a self-deprecating smile. But I couldn't walk away. Like you couldn't walk away when Kate was bullying my mother. His eyes held hers. That's not foolishness, Elena. It's character. The simple compliment warmed her more than she expected. Thank you. No, James said softly. Thank you. For seeing my mother as a person, not a problem to be managed. For bringing life back into this house. He glanced around the kitchen, which now bore the signs of actual cooking. Herbs hanging to dry, a bowl of fresh fruit, cookbooks open on the counter. I didn't realize how sterile it had become until I walked in today and smelled apple strudel. Sometimes we don't notice what's missing until we experience it again, Elena said. James nodded, a thoughtful expression crossing his face. I should let you get some rest. It's been an eventful day. Good night, James. Good night, Elena. He paused at the doorway. I'm glad you're here. Over the next few weeks, Sterling Estate transformed. James postponed his international trips, working from home instead. He joined his mother and Elena for meals, the dining room filling with conversation and laughter. The heavy drapes remained open, sunlight streaming into rooms that had been kept in shadow. Elena noticed the changes in James as well. The serious businessman was still there, but alongside him emerged a man with a dry wit, a deep loyalty to his family, and a surprising knowledge of food and wine. One evening, as they prepared dinner together, James had insisted on learning to cook a few simple dishes. Elena found herself studying him as he carefully chopped vegetables. His movements were precise, methodical, just as she would have expected from someone who approached everything with such focus. You're a natural, she said, impressed by his knife skills. He smiled, that rare, transformative expression that lit his serious face. I have a good teacher, and I've always been a quick study. Your mother says you were always serious, even as a child. She's right. I was the responsible one, the planner. Michael was the dreamer, the one who lived in the moment. A shadow crossed his face. After he died, I think I became even more focused on control, on building something that would last. The company became everything. And now? Elena asked softly. James looked up, meeting her eyes. Now I'm remembering there are other things worth building. Family. Home. He hesitated. Connections. The word hung between them, weighted with possibility. Evelyn entered the kitchen then, moving more steadily than she had when Elena first arrived. Something smells wonderful. James is making risotto, Elena said, breaking the moment, and doing an excellent job of it. My son, cooking? Evelyn's eyes twinkled. Wonders never cease. James laughed. Don't get too excited, mother. I'm still a beginner. But willing to learn, Evelyn said approvingly. That's what matters. As autumn deepened into winter, Elena found herself looking forward to those evening conversations. James was unlike any man she'd known, brilliant and driven, yet increasingly thoughtful and present. He sought her opinions not just on meals but on business matters, valuing her practical perspective. For his part, James found himself lingering in the kitchen, watching Elena work, admiring the confident precision of her movements. the creativity she brought to each dish. He began joining her on trips to the farmer's market, carrying bags and learning about seasonal ingredients. "You've changed this house," he told her one snowy evening as they sat by the fire in the library. "It was a mausoleum before. Now it feels alive again." "Your mother says the same thing about you being home," Elena replied. "She lights up when you're here." "And you?" James asked, his voice softer. "What makes you light up, Elena?" The question caught her off guard. "Creating something beautiful that brings joy to others," she answered honestly. "Seeing someone taste something I've made and forget everything else for a moment. Like I did with that duck confit at Lumiere 2 years ago," James said with a smile. "I still remember it. I had no idea I was experiencing the work of my future chef. Is that all I am?" The words slipped out before Elena could stop them. James set down his glass and moved closer, his eyes intent on hers. "No," he said quietly. "You're the woman who saved my mother, who reminded me what matters, who makes this house feel like home." He reached for her hand. "You're much more than my chef, Elena." Their first kiss was gentle, tentative, a question rather than a demand. When they parted, Elena saw vulnerability in James's eyes that his business rivals would never believe possible. "I didn't plan this," he confessed. "When I hired a chef, I wasn't expecting a middle-aged woman with culinary school debt and a tendency to interfere in family business," Elena suggested with a nervous laugh. "A remarkable woman who stands up for what's right, who creates beauty with her hands, who sees people for who they really are." James touched her cheek. "Age is irrelevant. Debt is temporary. Character is forever." If this story touched your heart, subscribe to Timeless Love Tales with Mr. Harrison for more stories of courage, dignity, and love that transforms lives. As winter melted into spring, Sterling Estate continued its transformation. Evelyn grew stronger, taking daily walks in the garden with Elena and James. The kitchen became the heart of the house, filled with experimentation and laughter. James restructured his work schedule to be home more, discovering that his presence actually improved company operations rather than hindering them. One evening in early May, James asked Elena to prepare a special dinner for just the two of them on the terrace overlooking the gardens. When she arrived, she found the space transformed with twinkling lights and flowers. "What's the occasion?" she asked, taking in the romantic setting. 6 months, James said, pulling out her chair. 6 months since you walked into our lives and changed everything. Elena smiled. "Has it been that long already?" "Not long enough," James replied, his eyes warm as he gazed at her. "I've been thinking about time lately, how I wasted so much of it chasing success, missing what was right in front of me." "You've built an incredible company," Elena reminded him. "That's not wasted time." "No, but I lost perspective. I forgot why I was building it in the first place." He reached across the table for her hand. "My father wanted to create something that would provide for his family, that would give us security and opportunity. Somewhere along the way, I made the company the end rather than the means. And now," Elena asked softly, "now I understand what really matters." James took a deep breath. "Elena, these past months with you have shown me what home feels like, what happiness feels like. You walked into this house and brought light back into it, into my mother's life, into mine." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "I'm not asking because of gratitude, or because you saved my mother, or because you make the best duck confit in the world." His smile was tender as he opened the box, revealing a simple but elegant diamond ring. "I'm asking because I love you, because I want to build a life with you, because you make me better." Elena felt tears spring to her eyes. "James, I know it's fast," he said quickly. "And I know there are practical considerations, your career, your independence. I don't want to change who you are or what you do. I just want to be part of it." Elena looked at the man before her, so different from the cold, absent figure Evelyn had described when she first arrived. She thought about the journey they'd taken together, about the warmth and purpose she'd found at Sterling Estate. "Yes," she said simply. "Yes, I'll marry you." James's face lit with joy as he slipped the ring onto her finger. "You've made me the happiest man in the world. You've given me a home," Elena replied softly. "Not just a place to live, but a place to belong." Later that evening, they shared their news with Evelyn, who embraced Elena with tears in her eyes. "I knew from the moment you opened those drapes and let the light in," she said. "You were exactly what this family needed." The wedding was held in the gardens of Sterling Estate that autumn, as the leaves turned gold and crimson around them. It was a small, intimate affair, just family and close friends. Evelyn, radiant in blue silk, was escorted down the aisle by Thomas, who had become a trusted friend to them all. Elena wore a simple ivory gown and carried herbs and flowers from the garden she had nurtured back to life. As she walked toward James, she reflected on the journey that had brought her here, from the desperate woman clutching her resume at the gates to the confident bride she was today. James watched her approach, his heart full. The reluctant titan of business had found something far more valuable than corporate success. He had found love, family, home. Their vows were personal and heartfelt. James promised to always see Elena for who she truly was, to value her strength and independence, to create a partnership of equals. Elena promised to remind him of what truly mattered, to create a home filled with warmth and connection, to stand beside him through whatever challenges came their way. As they celebrated afterward, Evelyn raised a toast to the couple. To James and Elena, who remind us that it's never too late to open the drapes and let the light in. 1 year later, Elena stood in the kitchen of Sterling Estate, supervising the final preparations for a special dinner. The house was filled with the aromas of her signature dishes, prepared now by the staff she had trained for her new restaurant in the city. "Everything looks perfect," James said, coming up behind her and wrapping his arms around her waist. "Mother is beside herself with excitement." "It's not every day a woman celebrates her 84th birthday," Elena replied, leaning back against him, "and announces her new foundation." The Evelyn Sterling Foundation for Culinary Arts and Elder Dignity had been Evelyn's idea, a way to combine Elena's passion for food with their shared commitment to treating older adults with respect. The foundation would provide culinary training for caregivers in elder facilities, teaching them to prepare nutritious, appealing meals that honored individual preferences and cultural traditions. "She's found her purpose," James said proudly. "I've never seen her so energized." "She's always had purpose," Elena corrected gently. "She just needed someone to listen to her ideas." James kissed her temple. "You taught me that. To listen, to be present." "We taught each other," Elena replied, turning in his arms to face him. "You showed me I could rebuild, that my worth wasn't tied to my professional success." "Speaking of professional success," James said with a smile, "the reviews for Lumiere Reborn are extraordinary. The waiting list is 3 months long." Elena's new restaurant, funded in part by James but run entirely under her direction, had opened to critical acclaim. She had hired many of her former staff, giving them ownership shares in the new venture. It was her way of making things right, of creating something sustainable from the ashes of her previous career. "Success tastes sweeter when it's shared," she said, echoing the philosophy that now guided both their personal and professional lives. The doorbell rang, signaling the arrival of the first guests. The celebration would include not only family friends but also the first recipients of the foundation's grants, chefs and caregivers committed to transforming the dining experience for older adults. "I should check on your mother," Elena said, wiping her hands on a towel. "She's in the garden with Thomas, supervising the flower arrangements." James caught her hand before she could leave. "Elena, wait. There's something I've been wanting to tell you." She paused, noting the serious expression that had returned to his face. "What is it?" "I received an offer yesterday. A major tech conglomerate wants to acquire Sterling Technologies. The deal would be substantial." Elena studied him carefully. "And how do you feel about that?" "A year ago, I would have dismissed it immediately. The company was my identity, my legacy." He took a deep breath. "But now I'm considering it. Not selling entirely, but stepping back from day-to-day operations. Bringing in new leadership. That's a big change," Elena said softly. Are you sure? James nodded. I want more time with you, with Mother, with the foundation. I want to travel, not for business meetings, but to experience new cultures, new flavors. His eyes held hers. I want to build a different kind of legacy. Elena felt a rush of emotion. This was perhaps the greatest testament to how much James had changed, that he could contemplate stepping away from the company that had once consumed him. Whatever you decide, she said, squeezing his hand. I'm with you. I know, he replied simply. That's what gives me the courage to consider it. The party was a joyous affair. Evelyn, elegant in a deep purple dress that complemented her silver hair, moved among the guests with energy that belied her years. She spoke passionately about the Foundation's mission, introducing Elena as both her daughter-in-law and the creative force behind the initiative. Elena taught me that food is more than sustenance, she told the assembled guests. It's dignity, connection, memory, love. Every person deserves to be nourished in body and spirit, especially as they age. As Elena watched her mother-in-law command the room, she marveled at the transformation. This vibrant, engaged woman bore little resemblance to the frail figure she had first encountered in the darkened sunroom. Good food had been the beginning, but it was being seen, heard, and valued that had truly revitalized Evelyn. Later, as the celebration wound down, Elena found herself alone with Evelyn in the kitchen. The older woman was arranging leftover pastries on a plate, humming softly to herself. You should be resting, Elena chided gently. It's been a long day. Nonsense, Evelyn replied with a wave of her hand. I'm too excited to rest. Did you see how enthusiastic the grant recipients were? We're going to make a real difference, Elena. Yes, we are, Elena agreed, helping her with the arrangement. Your vision for the foundation is inspiring. Evelyn paused, her eyes suddenly serious. I want to thank you, my dear. For what? The party? The foundation was your idea. For standing between me and Catherine that day, Evelyn interrupted softly. For seeing me when others saw only an old woman with fading faculties. For bringing my son back to me. Elena felt tears prick her eyes. You did the same for me. You gave me a home when I had nothing. We saved each other, Evelyn said simply. She glanced toward the doorway where James had appeared. All of us. James crossed to join them, placing an arm around each woman. The two strongest women I know, conspiring in the kitchen. Should I be worried? Always, Elena teased, leaning into his embrace. Mother, the car is waiting to take the last guests to their hotels. Thomas has everything under control here. Evelyn nodded, suddenly looking tired despite her protests. It was a wonderful evening, the perfect birthday. And just the beginning, James promised, kissing her cheek. The foundation is going to transform lives, just as you and Elena transformed mine. As they walked Evelyn to her suite, now relocated to the main floor for easier access to the gardens she loved, Elena reflected on the journey that had brought them here. From a desperate job interview to a family united by love and purpose. It was more than she could have imagined when she stood at those wrought iron gates 18 months ago. Later that night, as she and James prepared for bed, Elena found herself drawn to the window overlooking the estate. The gardens were silvered by moonlight, the same gardens that had been neglected when she arrived but now bloomed with renewed vitality. What are you thinking? James asked, coming to stand beside her. About light, she replied. About how sometimes we need someone else to open the drapes for us, to show us what we've been missing. James wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. You opened more than drapes, Elena. You opened hearts. She turned in his embrace, looking up at the man who had once been the distant, driven, reluctant Titan, and was now her partner in every sense. We did it together. All of us. Together, he agreed, kissing her softly. That's how we'll build our future. As spring turned to summer, the Sterling estate continued to evolve. The foundation's offices occupied what had once been the formal dining room, now filled with light and activity. Evelyn spent her mornings there, working with the small but dedicated staff, while her afternoons were often devoted to testing recipes with Elena for the Foundation's first cookbook. James, true to his word, had begun the process of restructuring Sterling Technologies. He remained as chairman but had appointed a talented CEO to handle daily operations, freeing him to focus on strategic direction and, more importantly, on building a life beyond the company. One warm June evening, as they sat on the terrace enjoying dinner, James raised his glass in a toast. "To new beginnings," he said, his eyes moving from Elena to his mother and back again. "What new beginning are we celebrating?" Evelyn asked, raising her own glass. James smiled, reaching for Elena's hand. "Should we tell her?" Elena nodded, her face glowing with quiet joy. "We're going to have a baby," she said softly. "In January." Evelyn's eyes filled with tears. "Oh, my dears, this is wonderful news. We wanted you to be the first to know," James said. "After all, you're the one who brought us together in your way." "By needing a chef?" Evelyn asked, puzzled. "By needing an advocate," Elena corrected gently. "If you hadn't been here, needing someone to stand up for you, James and I might never have found each other. Sometimes the greatest gifts come from our greatest challenges," Evelyn said thoughtfully. "My memory issues brought you to us, and now look, a new generation of Sterlings to carry on. With Blackwood's spirit," James added, squeezing Elena's hand. "Our child will have the best of both of us." As the sun set over Sterling Estate, casting long golden shadows across the gardens, Elena thought about the unexpected path that had led her here. From the ashes of her career had risen something far more precious. A family bound not by obligation but by choice, by love, by mutual respect. The house that had once felt cold and sterile now pulsed with life and purpose. The kitchen that had been pristine but unused now bore the happy marks of actual cooking. Dog-eared cookbooks, herbs drying from rafters, the occasional splash of sauce on the backsplash. The sunroom where she had first met Evelyn now served as a gathering place, its drapes permanently open to welcome the light. And at the center of it all was the simple truth Elena had known all along. That food was more than sustenance, that a house was not necessarily a home, that family could be found in the most unexpected places. "What are you thinking?" James asked, noticing her contemplative expression. "That I'm exactly where I'm meant to be," Elena replied, one hand resting lightly on her still flat stomach. "With exactly who I'm meant to be with. Even though I'm just a billionaire who couldn't boil water when you met me?" he teased. "Even though," she agreed with a smile, "though you make a decent risotto now." "Thanks to you," he said softly. "Everything good in my life is thanks to you." "Not everything," Elena corrected, nodding toward Evelyn, who was contentedly sipping her wine and watching a pair of cardinals in the garden. "You always had her. You just needed to see her. Really see her. And you helped me do that," James acknowledged. "You stood between her and someone who would diminish her. You reminded me what courage looks like." "It wasn't courage," Elena said thoughtfully. "It was just humanity, recognizing another person's dignity and defending it." "That's the definition of courage in my book," James replied. "And it's what I hope our child learns from you." As twilight deepened into night, the three of them remained on the terrace, talking softly about the future. The Foundation's expanding programs, the baby's nursery, the cookbook Evelyn and Elena were creating together. It was a scene that would have been unimaginable when Elena first arrived at Sterling Estate. Three people connected not by obligation but by genuine love and respect, building something meaningful together. Later, as Elena and James prepared for bed, he pulled her close, his hand gently covering hers over their growing child. "Do you ever think about that day?" he asked. "The day I came home early and found you defending my mother?" "Sometimes," Elena admitted. "I was terrified I'd lose my job, but I couldn't stand by and watch Kate bully her." "I knew in that moment," James said softly, "watching you stand between my mother and someone who would harm her, that you were extraordinary. Not because you were a renowned chef or because you'd created the best meal I'd ever tasted 2 years before, but because you had the courage to do what was right, regardless of the cost." And I knew when you stepped out of the shadows with that smile, Elena replied, that everything was about to change, that somehow, despite all odds, I'd found my way home. Home, James repeated, the word rich with meaning. That's what you've given all of us, Elena. Not just a place to live, but a place to belong. A place where we're seen for who we truly are and loved because of it, not despite it. As they drifted off to sleep, Elena thought about the journey that had brought her here. From desperate job seeker to beloved wife, from renowned chef to expectant mother, from employee to equal partner. It hadn't been an easy path, but it had been the right one. And it had all begun with a simple act of standing up for someone who needed protection, of opening drapes to let in light that had been shut out for too long. In the quiet darkness of their bedroom, with James's steady breathing beside her and new life growing within her, Elena knew with absolute certainty that this family, this home, this love, was the most exquisite creation of her life. Better than any dish she had ever prepared, more satisfying than any professional accolade she had ever received. Because in the end, it wasn't about the mansion or the money or the prestigious career. It was about connection, about seeing others clearly and being truly seen in return, about creating a place where everyone could flourish, where dignity was honored, where love was expressed through both grand gestures and small daily kindnesses. It was about building a home, not of stone and wood, but of care and respect and abiding love. And that, Elena thought as sleep claimed her, was a recipe worth sharing with the world. Remember, my beautiful sisters, true wealth isn't measured in dollars but in courage, integrity, and love. Share this message with someone who needs to hear it today.